Good morning. Well, we're going to do a little bit of review on the one-step equations here. And we're going to start off with one thing that I really tried to emphasize in class was that when you balance an equation, look at all these people that are tightrope walking. You see, you got little pictures here, all sorts of pictures. They got their arms out. This girl's got a long pole to kind of help balance herself. This guy's got even, well, that's a figurine there. And look, she has these jars on her head and doing it, walking pretty good. This guy's using his arms. All right, so what they're doing is they're trying to balance themselves and they're trying to make it equal on both sides of their body. Usually you have something that's about the same length on each side of you, and that way you can kind of keep yourself balanced. Like this guy, you see, he's kind of, I don't know, he's got one arm over his head, one arm down. You know, he's trying to find his center of balance. All right, we got this lady from back in the day, well, not too far back in the day, walking across. When we do these equations, always think about the balance you're trying to do. If you do one thing to the other, you have to do to the same side on the other side. So we're going to walk through a few equations. And remember, these one-step equations are very, very simple. It's something you might be able to do in your head, and you say, well, why do I have to do it with algebra? Well, what comes later will help you. So we start off with basic stuff so that we can do more complicated things. Arithmetic is, just add, subtracting, and you can do that in your head, but I want you to start thinking about variables again, just like we did in class. And I know y'all fought me over this. Y'all fought me very, very much, but it's okay. All right, we're going to try to remind ourselves what we did in class earlier this year. So we're going to do adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing one-step equations, and I pulled these off of Khan Academy, so a lot of these questions you might see. So we have a problem here. It is k plus 10 equals 27. So this is a one-step equation. So what I have over here is, no matter what, you want to write the equation back down. Just because it's on a sheet of paper in front of you, just because it's on a computer screen, you need to write the equation again on another sheet of paper. And I know you're going to be mad about that. Oh, we're wasting paper. There's plenty of trees. We have plenty of trees. It's a great industry. You're only helping people have a job. So get out a sheet of paper and write down that equation again. And this is just because I've seen you make so many mistakes this year because you did not properly record the problem. All right, so the first step is write the equation. You can see that right there. The second step is, you're going to remember this, is you're going to find the operation. You had adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. And so in the original problem, we have addition. So what is the inverse or the opposite of addition? So what a lot of times they say what undoes something, or if we have multiplication, what undoes multiplication. What's the opposite of addition? If we're going forward, the opposite is going backwards, right? So we have subtraction. So we're going to find that addition and we're going to turn it into a subtraction. And so in this second step right here, this is the same as second step, first step right there. Second step is we're going to find the inverse. So we see the operation as adding 10. What's the inverse of adding 10? Well, it is subtracting 10 right there. And we're going to put it right under it. We're going to line them up. Now, this is one way of looking at it. It just makes it a little simpler to see what we're doing. 10, positive 10, minus 10, well, that's going to be 0. So we're kind of doing that in our head. Now, the balance part, remember we're talking about the balance beam. The balance is, this is an equation, okay? This is that tightrope. And you have balance on the left. Right now, k plus 10 equals 27. So you're walking down that tightrope and you're doing great. But the moment you take away 10 from this side, you're going to fall off, right? This side's going to be heavier. So what do we have to do? We have to do the same thing to the right side, or the opposite. We have to rebalance this equation. And the way we do that is we just, whatever we did to the left side, which we subtracted 10, we're going to do the same thing to the right side. So I'm going to line them up here. Subtract 10. 27 minus 10, well, the last thing is we're going to simplify. 27 minus 10 is 17. And we already found out that 10 minus 10 is 0, so that's left with k. That's all we have left is k. So I know it says a one-step equation, but it's really saying one operation equation. There's only one operation going on here. But I like to do it in 3 steps. That way it's nice and clean. And I know I have a lot of green marks here, but let's take a look at another problem. And so on every one of these problems, I want you to write this out to your right or left, however you want. If you're having trouble, okay, if you're getting this, you're writing them down perfect, don't worry about it. But if you're like, I don't remember, this is going to be a way to remember. So let's go over the next one. We're doing subtraction. R minus 14 equals 23. So the first step is write the equation. The next thing is, well, I'm going to rewrite it. What is the inverse? I'm doing r subtracting 14 equals 23. And a lot of times saying this out loud is going to help. R subtracting. What's my operation? It's subtraction. What is the inverse of subtraction? Well, that is addition. All right, so we know that negative 14 plus 14. And what is the point of doing this? Why are we trying to do the inverse? The whole thing is we want our problem to say r equals something. So we're really trying to get rid of that negative 14. How do I get rid of negative 14? Well, I add 14. That gives me 0. Right, so I wrote the equation. I'm going to do a check mark. I just did the inverse. Now I must balance the equation. So whatever I added 14, now I have to go to this opposite side of the equation, the other side of the tightrope, and I must add 14. So if we are lining this up, that will be 737. I balanced it and I simplified it. R equals 37. Circle your answer and we move on. All right. Next problem is we're going to look at the decimals. It's the same thing, and there's one thing different here. We have the equations kind of flipped. We have the variable on the right side. Does it matter? Not at all. This is the same thing we were doing before. And so first thing is, did you write the equation correctly? Good job. Second thing is, we're going to do the inverse. So I'm going to rewrite the equation, 2.2 plus x, 6.2 equals 2.2 addition x. So my operation is addition. What is the inverse of addition? Well, that is subtracting. So I'm going to subtract 2.2. Why did I choose 2.2? Because I want x by itself. Because x is what we do not know. A variable is unknown. All right, so I want x to always be at the end of my problem. I want the variable to equal something. So I get rid of these numbers here. 2.2 minus 2.2 will give me 0. Great, that'll leave me with just x. So I did the inverse. Did I balance it? Not yet. Now I have to go to the opposite side of the equation, the other side of the tightrope, and I have to subtract it also. 2 minus 2 is 0. 6 minus 2 is 4. Remember, with our decimals, we line them up, and it is right there. So x equals 4. Did I simplify? Well, did I balance? Yes. Did I simplify? Yes. There we go. Let's keep on moving. All right. So we did adding and subtracting. Now we're going to do multiplying and dividing. And a lot of people have trouble with this. And, you know, rightfully so. It's a little bit different. But if you think about it the same way, think about the inverse. So the first step is, did we write the equation? That is y divided by. Now, a lot of times we don't say that. We just say y over 8. But that is divided by. And if we're dividing something, that is division. All right, a fraction is just a division problem. That's one of those cool things. It's just dividing something. So I'm going to rewrite this equation, y divided by 8. And the reason why I'm saying divided and saying over or something more relaxed is because I want you to understand what operation we're doing. Y divided by 8. And so what is the inverse of division? Well, this is where it gets weird. Division, the inverse is multiplication. So I'm going to put a little multiplication symbol here. Remember the dot. This works. But what do I multiply? Do I multiply it by y over 8 again? No, this is where you have to kind of memorize this. You're going to multiply by the inverse. Well, what's the inverse of 8? Well, 1 over 8, right? That is actually 8 over 1. All right, because remember, y is really the same thing as saying y over, or 1 over y. 1y over 8, my bad. And that's the same thing. So isn't this the inverse right here? And if we multiplied these across, 8 times y equals 8, right? We divide it. What do you get? You get 1y or just y. That's all it is. So there's a little bit more to... I just erased all that. Let me undo it. There we go. There's a little bit more to that, why that works, but you need to multiply by the inverse. And so I did that. Did I balance it yet? No, I need to multiply this side by 8 over 1. And 5 over 1 times 8 over 1 is 40. 1y equals 40. Can I simplify that? Yeah, let's make it a little easier. Y equals 40. All right, so I balanced it. I simplified it. All right, and we're going to do a few more here. Now, I know you can do this in your head. Okay, that's arithmetic. You need to make sure you work these out in these steps. It's going to make it easier with multi-step equations, things like that. So write the equation of 9 times a. Remember that implies that there's a multiplication right there. 9 times a equals 81. And so I wrote the equation. Very good job. And I'm going to rewrite it. 9 times a equals 81. And so what is the inverse of multiplication? Well, that's going to be division. And so if you see here, I'm going to divide 9a by 9. And what does that give me? That gives me 1. And the whole goal here is to, again, at the end of this problem, I want to say a equals. I want to isolate the variable. And I might not have said that yet. Isolate the variable. All right, so I did the inverse. Now, did I balance it? Did I go, right now I'm about to fall off the tightrope. What do I have to immediately do? I have to balance this equation. I have to go to the right side of the equation, do 81 divided by 9, and that'll give us our answer of 9. Now, one thing I am kind of going through here, you can always double check if this is correct. That's what's so amazing about these equations. Because a equals 9. We figured out what the unknown was. It was like a little mystery novel or something, or a Scooby-Doo thing. Who is the bad guy? Well, we figured out it's 9. Well, is it truly 9? Well, I'll go back up here and I'll substitute a. Everywhere I see a, I'm going to substitute 9. So 9 times 9 equals 81. Well, we did a good job. All right. Finally, we have a decimal one. Here we have f divided by 6 equals 2.5. So write the equation properly. And again, a lot of y'all are already kind of working ahead. You know what's going on here. What's the inverse of division? Well, it's multiplication. Remember, you got to multiply by the inverse. What is the inverse of 1 over 6? Remember, that's 1f equals 6, or 1f divided by 6. That'll be 6 over 1. So now we have 6 over 6, which will give us f. And if you're wondering where that came from, 6 times 1 is 6f. And 1 times 6 is 6. You divide 6 divided by 6. That'll give you 1f or f, like that. Okay, so we did the inverse, and now let's balance it. Now I have to multiply this side by 6 over 1. So 6 times 2 is 12, right? And so what would be 6 times 2.5? Well, what's half of 6? That's 3. So 12 plus 3, that would be 15. All right. So we have 15, f equals 15, and let's go ahead and plug this back in. 15 divided by 6, you can't see my calculator, but you should be doing this also. 15 divided by 6, and I got syntax error because I was not paying attention. 2.5, great job. Main thing here is follow your steps. If you need this, write it alongside every problem, every line you have, until you get it. Now this is just for one step. When we do 2-step, it's going to be a little bit longer. 3-step, multi-step, all sorts of steps. Okay, you can really have equations that go on for a very, very long time. But if you follow these things, if you combine like terms, if you understand inverse and balance, you can solve any problem, really. Honestly, any problem, any equation. But if you don't have the basics, you can't. So remember, keep your head up, keep working hard, and you got it.